The current season is finally coming to an end, so here is our pick of the top 10 biggest mistakes made by Premier League clubs in 2019-20. Let's go. 10. Aubameyang's contract. The FA Cup aside, Arsenal have endured a difficult season. Unai Emery was sacked, record signing Pepe has failed to ignite, and the club has been troubled with issues of internal dissent. But perhaps their biggest mistake was not tying Pierre Emerick-Aubameyang to a new deal at the start of the campaign. The Gabonese forward's contract is scheduled to expire in the summer of 2021, and Arsenal have struggled to convince him to extend. That's because, for all Aubameyang's brilliance, he is yet to claim any silverware in North London. Having just turned 31, it's unsurprising the former Borussia Dortmund star is apparently keen to join a title-winning outfit while he can. As a result, the entire season has been dominated by the story of what he will do next. It may not have affected his performances, netting 23 times in all competitions to date, but the uncertainty over their biggest star's future has undoubtedly infected squad morale. The fact it took dangerously long for 18-year-old Bukayo Saka to sign a contract extension is a prime example. Aubameyang has reportedly named his price to stay, roughly $250k per week, and considering their strange transfer policy in recent years, Arsenal would be silly not to accept. It would at least improve the spirit around the Emirates heading into the 2020-21 season. 9. Doubting Bruno Fernandes. The pick of the January transfers is without doubt Manchester United's £50 million acquisition of Bruno Fernandes. The Portuguese playmaker has been a revelation at Old Trafford, scoring 6 and assisting 5 in a mere 9 games. The only concern for Red Devils fans is why Bruno wasn't playing for them earlier, as United had a number of chances to make that happen. The 25-year-old has been a constant standout performer in Liga NOS, registering a ridiculous 67 goal involvements during 2.5 years for Sporting CP. As a result, his name was never too far from the gossip columns, with United and Tottenham both chasing his signature. Many assumed a deal would be reached last summer, but despite his jaw-dropping numbers, Manchester United remained unconvinced. According to reports, the club scouts had issues with his ball retention ability and were reluctant to sanction a big money move. It took another quality 6 months for United to finally get their act together, and what a signing he has proved to be. Their hunt for Champions League football this season would have surely been less stressful had Bruno been with them from the start. Just before we move on to our next entry, just a quick reminder to subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and hit the notification bell to never miss a video. 8. Watford's manager mess. If Watford are ultimately relegated, the blame will lie entirely on a crazy start to the season that saw them on their third manager by Christmas. The first of all was Javi Gracia. Just 4 months after leading the Hornets to their first FA Cup final in 35 years, the Spaniard was fired by the Pozzo family, having claimed just a single point from their opening 4 games in 2019-20. In his place arrived Quique Sanchez Flores, back at Vicarage Road 3 years after his own controversial dismissal from the club. But the happy reunion quickly turned sour. Flores managed a single win and 4 draws in the next 10 games, and for the second time in his career was sent packing from Hertfordshire. Nigel Pearson inherited a side that looked destined for the drop, but the gritty Englishman has worked wonders, claiming points in every other game to drag Watford from the relegation zone. But even that hasn't been enough to secure him a long-term future at the club, with the owners firing him in an astonishing move with just 2 games left to play. The Pozzi have to take responsibility for the horrendous dismissal of Gracia after so few games, the misguided return of Sanchez Flores, and the ludicrous decision to sack Pearson. Whatever the final outcome in the table, this season will remain a blemish on their ownership credentials. 7. Joelinton. When Steve Bruce was announced as the new Newcastle manager, everyone was quick to deride the Magpies as relegation favourites. But much to the Englishman's credit, Newcastle have enjoyed a solid, if not spectacular, campaign, easing to mid-table safety. Their fight for survival, however, would have been much easier if they possessed an actual goalscorer. Controversial owner Mike Ashley surprised everyone back in July 2019 by dropping £40 million on former Hoffenheim striker Joelinton, smashing the club's record transfer by over £17 million after apparently developing an obsession with the Brazilian. In reality, Joelinton didn't possess the CV of a £40 million striker. He'd only ever scored 7 times in 28 Bundesliga appearances, with much of his success coming against weaker opposition in Austria. Bruce's predecessor Rafa Benitez was even against the move, wanting the money to be used in other areas. Sure enough, the South American has been a flop. He's found the net just twice despite starting 32 league games and takes a dismal 1.6 shots per match. As a result, only Bournemouth and Norwich City have scored fewer than Newcastle, whose top scorer is John Joe Shelvey on 6 goals. Mike Ashley may have thought spending big would silence some of his critics, but on this occasion, it only made things worse. 6. David Moyes. Life under David Scholes and Sullivan at West Ham United has been a constant tale of woe, and despite further big spending in the market, 2019-20 has proved to be no different. Arguably the biggest mistake the ownership made was replacing Manuel Pellegrini with David Moyes. Whether Pellegrini even deserved to be fired is open to debate, but Moyes was surely not an upgrade on the Chilean. The Scot did manage to save West Ham back in 2017-18 and returned, citing his infamous 42% win rate as a Premier League manager as evidence of his ability. 2 wins in his first 2 games suggested the Scot was back to his best, but since then there's been little to cheer about in East London. By the 8th of July, the Hammers had only won 3 times in the league since January, and it took pressure from the fans for Moyes to start playing Michail Antonio more regularly, while he's also struggled to get the best from expensive signings like Pablo Fornals and star player Felipe Anderson. In the end, Antonio has been their greatest lifeline in recent games, with his 5 goals helping the club to vital victories over Norwich City and Watford, points which should be enough to see them through. Regardless of whether West Ham survive, it looks almost certain that the Glaswegian will be looking for a new club next year. 5. Leicester lineups. Leicester City have been a constant presence in the top 4 all season, thanks to a stunning run back in 2019 that saw them win 13 of their opening 20 games. Part of the success in this period was down to Brendan Rodger's consistent team selections. The back 4 rarely changed, while Ndidi, Maddison and Tielemans provided a familiar core to the side with Vardy up top. However, since football returned from the shutdown, the Northern Irishman has constantly tinkered with his lineup. He's yet to field the same starting 11 in any of the Fox's 8 Premier League games, and has even changed from his trusted 4-1-4-1 to a 3-5-2 on occasion. While he hasn't been very lucky with injuries, the 2-1 defeat away at Everton would have been particularly frustrating for Leicester fans, as Maddison and Ayoze Perez were unnecessarily relegated to the bench, only to come on at half-time. Rodgers even admitted to making selection mistakes earlier in the season, when he left out an in-form Hamza Chowdhury for a League Cup clash against Aston Villa. But it appears he hasn't learned the error of his ways. If Leicester City end up missing out on Champions League football, then Rodgers and his confusing selection policy should be where the blame lies. 4. Keeping Eddie Howe. It pains us to write this, but one has to wonder why Bournemouth persevered with Eddie Howe as they stared down the barrel of relegation. In the 42-year-old's defence, many of Bournemouth's mistakes were made in the transfer market. Over the past few years, a number of expensive signings like Jordan Ibe and Dominic Solanke have been a total disaster. With little resale value in their acquisitions, the Minnows have actually managed the 12th highest net spend in Europe, with outgoings of £151 million. For context, that's more than Liverpool. As a result, Howe has constantly had to rely on the stalwarts and regulars that helped stabilise Bournemouth in the top division. But it appears this campaign his magic touch has finally deserted him. Only Villa and Norwich City have conceded more than the Cherries, while the late flurry of results that has saved them in previous seasons has been nowhere to be seen. With the squad no longer reacting to his tactics and methods, a change would have represented the only possibility of survival. It's fair to argue that after 8 years at the helm, Howe deserved to see out the season, and he will always be held in the highest regard on the south coast. But loyalty has ultimately cost Bournemouth, and it could be a long road back to the Premier League. 3. Not replacing Kompany. Following a 1-0 defeat at Southampton in early July, Pep Guardiola was at a loss to explain how his side had been defeated 9 times in the Premier League this season. That's despite scoring more than anyone in the division and boasting one of the most expensively assembled squads in English football history. Guardiola may claim ignorance in public, but in reality everyone knows their problems lie at the heart of their defence, mainly their failure to replace the heroic figure of Vincent Kompany. Not only has his leadership been missed at the Etihad, but the near guarantee of an excellent performance when the Belgian was fit enough to play. The magnitude of his loss was brutally exposed this season thanks to a long-term injury to Aymeric Laporte. Without the former Athletic Club Man City's win rate dropped from 83% to 64%, while the average number of goals they conceded per game almost doubled to 1.2. With neither John Stones nor Nicolas Otamendi proving up to scratch, Guardiola was forced to play Fernandinho and Rodri in defence, and fast-track 19-year-old Eric Garcia into the starting 11. Top of their transfer list this summer will without doubt be a new centre-half. They made that mistake once, but won't let it happen again. 2. Crazy Villa spending. After Fulham perfected the blueprint of what not to do when you get promoted, you would have thought any new side to the Premier League would have taken notice, but apparently not Aston Villa. The Villains decided to trump the Cottagers' £104 million expenditure in 2018-19 by splashing a massive £143 million in the market. 16 players have arrived at Villa Park, giving Dean Smith an almost brand new starting 11. Many of the heroes who guided Villa to promotion were moved on, with only a handful of stars including John McGinn and Jack Grealish maintaining their place on the field. Unsurprisingly, the result has been near catastrophic for the West Midlands club. Dean Smith has been forced to use 28 different players, including 4 different keepers, as he struggled to find balance and success. Tottenham and Arsenal may have used one more each, but their squad was far more familiar, and top signing Wesley has been a flop with just 5 goals for Villa, while only Grealish has truly looked the part all season. Villa now look set for another painful relegation, which will be difficult for the club to swallow both on and off the pitch. Leeds and West Brom fans will just have to pray their clubs don't make the same mistake next season. 1. Mourinho's return. Tottenham Hotspur fans must be wondering whether their club is really in a better place under Jose Mourinho. The North Londoners went into mourning back in November 2019 when the hugely popular figure of Mauricio Pochettino was dismissed by Daniel Levy. The Lily Whites may have been languishing in 14th, but the Argentine had managed the club through one of their greatest periods in their modern history. The surprise of Mourinho as his replacement was superseded by the decision to hand him a bumper £15 million a year contract, almost double that of his predecessor, and an uncharacteristic move by the normally frugal ownership. The Portuguese legend was adamant that he had learned the error of his ways, but so far it has been more of the same from the former Chelsea boss. Players like Ndombele and Sessegnon have been alienated, while their style of play has arguably taken a backward step. And Mourinho's side failing to register a single shot on target against lowly Bournemouth in early July was a prime example of the Lily Whites' attacking worries under the 57-year-old. Mourinho may have been unlucky with injuries, he may need another transfer window, and Liverpool, Man City and United may be the only sides to have picked up more points than Tottenham since his arrival. But after the pure elation of life under Pochettino, this surely can't be what Levy had in mind when he decided to pull the trigger on his former friend. So those are our 10 biggest mistakes of the season, but what do you think was harsh and what should we have included? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop us a like and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time.